Never was there a story of greater woe than of Rare and their Banjo. I'm sure at this point in time everybody knows the tale of how Banjo Kazooie and Rare fell from grace as one of the most revered platformers and game developers respectively. However, it's the full story that seemingly no one knows. The span of time from Tooie to Nuts and Bolts is shrouded in mystery and rumors. Let's see exactly how this beloved bear and bird went extinct and how Rare transformed into just another game developer. Rare was originally founded in 1985 by Tim and Chris Stamper, two former arcade developers with the hopes of bringing their talents to home consoles. From this point until 1993, Rare created games to critical and financial success, the most notable being Battletoads. But it wasn't until 1994 when Nintendo bought a 25% stake, which gradually increased to 49%, in the company when Rare began to really push the envelope for quality video games. With this partnership, Rare became a second-party developer and was allowed to create first-party games like the Donkey Kong Country series, which went on to become some of the best-selling SNES games of all time. At the height of the 1990s, Rare was quickly becoming a company that consumers could remember, a company people were invested in emotionally. And that emotional connection was only strengthened with the release of the N64 and their most famous game, Banjo Kazooie. Released in June of 1998 for North America, Banjo Kazooie was the first 3D platformer to star a pair of symbiotic mascots teaming up for the greater good. But I think nowadays almost everyone knows what a banjo and a kazooie are. Regardless, Banjo Kazooie was released to critical and financial success, as it sold 2 million copies in its first year. Sure, Donkey Kong Country did sell more than that at 8 million, but for being self-published by Rare, that's pretty good. What's even more impressive is at this point, Rare consisted of only 15 members and were able to pull off a feat as large as Banjo Kazooie. Because the original was so successful and beloved by the N64 community, Rare then decided to make a sequel, aptly titled Banjo Tooie. This title was released in November of 2000 to critical acclaim and financial success, just like the original. However, things were not as smooth during the development of Banjo Tooie. The game was originally planned for a 1999 release, but was ultimately delayed for unspecified reasons. Development was rough for Tooie, as several features like stop and swap were cut due to time constraints and hardware limitations. Now, you can interpret these facts in two different ways. One is that the sequel was difficult to program since the developers wanted to make the game distinct from the original and have unique features. Perhaps Rare was too ambitious when planning out Tooie, not taking into consideration the primitive hardware they were working with. That's probably the more likely reason for all the development trouble, but after looking to what happens to Rare next, I started to think about Tooie in a new light. For those unaware of the great transition of 2002, this is commonly attributed to the decline of Rare. In 2002, game development prices were going up, and Rare did not have enough capital to self-fund their endeavors. Nintendo wasn't adequately funding Rare, and to the founders' surprise, Nintendo didn't purchase the remaining stock in the company. Why Nintendo essentially let Rare go, we'll never know for sure. I would speculate that Nintendo didn't think the company was that valuable of an asset to them, or that it would not have yielded any returns. So, like any other businessmen, they began to look for new buyers. A lot of people seem to blame Rare for being the ones who put the nail in the coffin for Banjo Kazooie, but they aren't entirely at fault. If Nintendo had purchased the remaining stake in the company, perhaps Rare would still be making platformers and other creative titles for Nintendo systems. However, that didn't happen. Instead, Activision and Microsoft became interested in buying Rare. When Activision's proposals fell through, Rare decided to go with a Microsoft deal, which bought the whole company for for 375 million US dollars. With all that money, you would think that Rare would be able to get out of the game development hole they were in, hire new people, and create more Rare-esque games, right? Well, that's exactly what didn't happen. During the transition, Donkey Kong Racing was cancelled and 30 employees left the company. Of course, Rare still produced games for Nintendo systems like Star Fox Adventures and some GBA Banjo games, but nothing as highly as acclaimed as Diddy Kong Racing or Banjo Kazooie. One of the worst things to come from this transition was debatably the supposed cancellation of Banjo 3. Now, the existence of this game has always been a topic of debate, and it has never been confirmed officially, but there's a lot of evidence to support it was a thing at some point in time. At Space World 2000, some footage of Banjo Kazooie on the GameCube was shown off, leading many to believe this was some sort of demo or proof of concept for Banjo 3. I mean, it's not entirely unlikely that 3 was going to be an actual game before the company officially severed ties with Nintendo. Some even hypothesized that Banjo 3 became nuts and bolts, but that's all it is, speculation. What's even more hilarious is that when E3 2015 came along and Rare was teasing this huge reveal of something great, so many people thought it would mean the return of the beloved bear and bird duo. However, it just turned out to be a pirate game. So with Banjo 3 and Nintendo out of the picture, what did this mean for Banjo Kazooie? Cars? Yes, Banjo Kazooie was re-engineered into a platforming racing game entitled Nuts and Bolts, one of the most infamous sequels of all time. Before Nuts and Bolts even existed, Rare planned to create a game called Banjo Karting, which was most likely meshed into some prototype for 3 to create Nuts and Bolts. In a way, Nuts and Bolts was inevitable considering Rare's love history with the racing genre. But why wouldn't they just publish 3 as 3, you might be asking? Well, based on the fact that the development time was so long, there were multiple delays, and the game was rumored to be silently cancelled, I'm led to believe that the company itself was facing numerous internal struggles. Before Nuts and Bolts was released, the founders even left the company to pursue other opportunities along with some other employees. Regardless, Nuts and Bolts was released in 2008 to critical panning and extremely low sales. The common opinion seemed to be that Nuts and Bolts was everything a Banjo game wasn't, and it sucked, even though nowadays it seems that more people see Nuts and Bolts as a decent racing game but not a good Banjo game. So, what happened after the atrocity that was Nuts and Bolts? Rare continued making games like Grab by the Ghoulies, Cameo, Elements of Power, and Viva Pinata, but the company was restructured and employed to work on Kinect games. When that piece of hardware failed, Rare was forced to lay off more workers, meaning that a very small percentage of the original staff is around producing games. In 2015, they released Rare Replay, which was fairly successful since it captured nostalgia and great games all in one place. And they are, like I said before, working on a pirate game called A Sea of Thieves. But wait, what's that on the horizon? Could it be the second coming of Banjo Christy? Well, no, but it is what many people believe is the next best thing, a spiritual successor to Banjo Kazooie called Yooka-Laylee. It's funny, any video that talks about Banjo Kazooie always ends with this happy ending, believing that Yooka-Laylee will save the Banjo Kazooie brand and re-glorify it. Do I think Yooka-Laylee will be good? Fuck yeah, but do I think it will save Banjo Kazooie and cause Rare to make Banjo 3? Maybe, but even if that were to happen, most of the developers have moved on from Rare, so Banjo 3 probably would be very different from the originals. At least someone is choosing to revitalize the series with a spiritual successor, unlike Crash, Klonoa, Spyro, and Croc, which all have laid dormant and forgotten by their owners for years. In the end, Banjo's fate was inevitable. With the changes Rare underwent to survive in the gaming industry, it was only a matter of time before Banjo slipped through the cracks. But who is to blame in all of this? Is it Rare that apparently made the choice to reinvent Banjo Kazooie into Nuts and Bolts? Is it Nintendo for not buying Rare and supplying them the funds to keep keep creating stellar titles? Is it Microsoft for influencing a lot of Rare's decisions and having them make shitty Kinect games? As for me, I think it's the gaming industry itself that's mostly to blame. Rare was presented with an unfortunate situation, with rising gaming costs and a highly competitive market, and who could blame them for not wanting to close down? And perhaps one day Banjo Kazooie will come back and Rare will make its triumphant return as the game developer we all adored. But until then, I'm waiting for Yooka-Laylee. As always, if you disagree or agree with me, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching and take care. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.